So a very, very warm welcome, sir. Grateful to have you for this meeting, for this evening, Sunday evening. Here I introduce Dr. G.V. Ramanjane, a PhD in agriculture. He got into IRS, but he chose to work as an agriculture research scientist. He is an executive director at Center for Sustainable Agriculture. He has been working obviously for a very long time with the farmers. One of his TED talks on poison on our plate has more than 2 million views. I guess everybody here should check out. There's another TED talk video on zero farmer suicide. It also has a lot of good traction. He came on Satyamed Dete in 2012 to talk about the success achieved successfully in completely eliminating use of pesticides as well. A very warm welcome for today. So, my first question would be to you. Could you share about yourself and about the current work that you've been doing? So there's a lot of work that you've already done. There's a lot of things that you've been. So what is it that's right now happening at your space?
A few important areas we are trying to work on is we are working with Andhra Pradesh government to establish several villages moving towards organic. So we call it as organic or natural farming. So we are working in 4 districts of Andhra Pradesh. So that's one area we are working, and that program is going to be one of the flagship programs in the country because entire state is now trying to move towards organic. So I think that is one major initiative happening in Andhra Pradesh. Second area we are trying to work in this is we're trying to look at the scientific understanding and then more rational approach to science to organic farming, because many times what we are seeing is it is all driven by belief system. Some believe desi cow is good, some believe something else is good, kind of thing, rather than looking at what works in a particular situation. So that is something we are trying to work on. Second area we are trying to work on is to organize farmers into cooperatives and link them to markets. So we work with about 200 farmer producer organizations in Andhra, Telangana, and Maharashtra. They're trying to organize them into cooperatives and producer companies and then link them to market. So towards that is one we are trying to work on. And when we are doing this, we are also trying to see that how all the farmers in these cooperatives get access to all the entitlements they have from the government, and then how they can learn business, and then they can plan out their business, how they can plan out their livelihood. So these are all the subcomponents of this FPOs thing we are trying to work on. Third area we are trying to work on is the public policy. So how this public policy is impacting on farmers, so how we can change for a betterment. So we are trying to do analysis of various public policies regularly, so both regulatory systems as well as investment systems. So currently one of the major area we are trying to work on is on the FPOs, the government new policies which have been announced. A series of policies have been announced about market reforms and then investments in FPOs and all. So that is one area we are trying to work on. Second, how to improve the governance of public support systems, say how credit system can be improved, how insurance system can be improved, how extension system can be improved. So that is another area we are trying to work on. And fourth area we are trying to work on is to build IT support system for farmers. So we call it as e-Krishi. Currently we have several mobile applications and several online platforms which we have built. One of it is Organic Mandi, where farmers can sell directly to the consumers, to the buyers. So it's a trading platform. And we have Sahaja Aharam, which is a retail initiative which farmers sell directly to the consumers. We also have Pestoscope, which is an application to help farmers to manage their pests and diseases. So like that, we are working on the IT platform. So broadly, these are the 4 areas we are trying to work on.
Right. So my second question would be, what do you think of the climate change which is impacting the farmers today? So like what I can see from the website is there's a lot of emphasis on the fact that there is a climate change which is happening, and this is something which is going to have a very long lasting effect on the farmers. We can already see that, but how do you see it right now?
Certainly. Say if you take the state of Andhra Pradesh, in the last 40 years there were 60 times there were cyclones. And last 10 years, there were 7 years which were drought. And so obviously many times cyclone and drought was together. And that's the situation of Andhra Pradesh alone. And across the country, if you take, there were except 5 states, I think all states have reduced rainfall today compared to say 30 years back. And even in the states where the rainfall has not reduced, the number of rainy days have come down significantly. So on few days you have an excessive downpour, and for many days you don't have rainfall. So rainfall has been affected significantly. We are seeing in urban cities as well. So Mumbai getting flooded, Hyderabad getting flooded. We are seeing it repeatedly. And for a long time there is no water. And in urban areas we are not feeling the pressure of water scarcity, because the municipal corporations try to get water from any other place and then supply. But whereas in the rural areas, water is a serious problem. So water is going to be one of the serious issue. Unfortunately, governments are not trying to look into water as a concern, and then still they think water is available unlimited. So I think that is one area we need to look at. Certainly, climate change is going to be a serious factor. And the temperature wise also, if you take by end of the decade, probably our temperatures will further increase, and by end of the century, mean sea levels may rise by about 4 feet is what the data shows. If that is the case, then how we are going to adapt to the changes? Climate is one area we need to look into. Second, agriculture also contributes significantly to the climate change in terms of, say, energy use, water use, chemical use. So how we can reduce these three in agriculture is also something we need to certainly look into. So in terms of mitigation, so there is a great mitigation potential for agriculture to do. At the same time, the same practices can also help farmers to adapt. So there's a win-win situation on both ends. So I think we need to understand this and then make changes in the way we do farming.
Right. So from what I could, the objective right now is to reach out to more number of people, especially urban people, who are sensitized towards doing something about the climate change. What we can see is there's a lot of floods happening in Assam, right now. And again, you talked about a lot of cyclone happening, much more number of types of cyclone drought. What is it that we youngsters, we can do something which can, contribute to supporting the, whatever bad effects that
See, there are two ways. One is directly how we are impacting on climate. Second, we need to look at indirectly how we are contributing, and then how we can reduce that part. So two ways we need to look into. Direct is about the emissions, per head, per family. If you take the amount of emissions we make is significant by way of our travel, by way of the energy which we are using, not just travel, but otherwise as well at home. The amount of energy we are using, because if you look at during the COVID lockdown period, data shows that the total energy consumption in the country is just 5% lower. So when the entire country is locked down, also it is only 5% lower, which means our energy consumption lies much more deeper, not just transport alone. So we need to certainly look at the energy consumption we are making, and then try to make a shift. How we can move towards more green energy is something which is very, very essential. We need to look into that part. Second, indirectly, our consumption is through way we consume. And we consume several products which are water intensive, energy intensive, and then probably last long as a pollutant in the environment. So how do we reduce that? A couple of examples I can give is, say, our own food consumption. When we are consuming our food, we don't worry about what food has done to the environment before coming into your plate. Many times we don't even worry about what food is doing to us. And even if we are worried, we are only worried about what it does to us, and then we'll consider it as safe if it is safely packed and then available on the supermarket shelf. So our imagination is not going beyond the supermarket shelf. Can we look beyond that? And from production to in production, what it has done to the farmer and it has done to the environment, and from there to before it reaches your plate, what it has done to the environment, we are not even looking into it. I can take a couple of examples. Say, many times the fruits which we are eating, say apples we are eating are from California. Imagine an apple flying all the way from California and coming to Hyderabad and then staying in the supermarket shelves for a while. So imagine the kind of ecological footprint it will have. Similarly, if you calculate our food consumption, say rice consumption, uh, every acre of rice consumes about 60 lakh liters of water, and 60 lakh liters of water is, if I had to draw a parallel, it is about 100 families 1 year daily water consumption is what 1 acre of paddy is. And then 1 acre, 1 kg of rice consumes about 5,000 liters of water. So every meal, every day, a family consumes about 5,000 liters of water, which means we are actually consuming about a tanker of water. So sitting in Hyderabad, if we talk about, say, don't build Polavaram or don't build Kaleshwaram, it makes no sense because those dams are built to grow more and more paddy. And there is also a lot of energy consumption. Say, for example, if you take all the lift irrigation dams or the tube wells which are being used, there's a lot of electricity which is used to pump out this water. We never look into that that whole dimension. Say, Telangana proudly talks about building a lot of dams now around in Telangana. And if all the dams comes into operation, how much energy it is going to consume? And rough estimation shows it would be around 12,000 megawatts. 12,000 megawatts. Currently, our total consumption is about 8,000 megawatts. So, additionally, if you need 12,000 megawatts, how much investment you have to make, and then how much that energy is going to affect the energy production is going to affect the environment? We never look into it. Similarly, where do you get energy? So, when the coal is getting depleted and when the petroleum and natural gases are depleted, where are we going to get our energy from? Obviously, we need to move towards nuclear energy. So if we start consuming what we are consuming now, and then we don't make any changes in our consumption, nor ask for any change in the production practices, and be happy, these are going to bound to happen. And when these are happening, and if we just sit on a Facebook and then type saying don't no to dams and then no to nuclear energy, it makes no sense. So I think we need to look at how these can be addressed. So we need to make changes in our own consumption pattern as well. I think that is the most critical part. Right. So our indirect impact is much, much larger.
Right. So you talked about two very important things. From what I heard was the carbon footprint that you're talking about. So like stopping of transportation really didn't help. Only 5% came down. So it's much deeper. It's much at an individual level that's happening.
Correct.
That
yes.
Consumption that is happening.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. Another thing that I hear is that you're talking about it's a lifestyle change, because rice is a staple food for most of the people, most coastal people, and a lot of people actually. So, and so much of water is being consumed just for production of rice. So there's a lot of maybe one needs to take a very informed decision on what to eat also.
What to eat? Of course, say we were making a calculation one-time meal of Hyderabad. If you say the lunch which all of us had in Hyderabad, the rice which is consumed, if I calculate, it would be amount of water which can be stored in Polavaram Dam. So that's a straight way. So right. That's the amount of water we consumed one time meal. And then, so what are we doing? So we are consuming huge amount of water in terms of our ecological footprint. And then now government took a decision that we increase the area under cotton and paddy in Telangana. So again, it will be more water consuming. So water is going to be one of the serious concerns we need to worry about.
Right, right. So,
and just to add on, you said it is a staple food for all of us. Yes. See, rice, something about the nutritional aspect also. See, rice is a carbohydrate, and it releases energy instantaneously. So when our lifestyle was hardworking, so most of the Indians comes from a farming background. So we either our parents, our grandparents, our forefathers were always into farming. So our bodies are made to that, and then our food habits are also built towards that. So when you are into hard work, then you need more energy, instantaneous energy. So rice and wheat are the good foods to eat. But today we moved into a different lifestyle. So most of us sit on tables and chairs. So basically in front of table and the chair is what most of our time we spent on. Otherwise we just walk. Nothing more than that we are spending. So we need to make our shift in the food consumption pattern also. So we don't need so much of carbohydrates. So we need to make that shift also. So we are not doing that. So all these carbohydrates which we are eating, so the energy is produced and we are not spending it. When we are not spending it, it transforms into fats and gets stored in the body. That's one of the reasons we see a lot of fat accumulation in our body. And by race, Indians have fat accumulation in the middle of the body. So we are a spindle-shaped bodies. So we become like spindles. That's one of the reasons we see. So that is all because of our lifestyle. So we need to change our food habits as well.
Right, right. So, another question that comes to my mind as a layman, as an absolutely urban lay person who doesn't know anything, when you talk about, okay, we need to lessen the carbohydrate intake, and a lot of people out there who say that, okay, you should be a vegetarian. And now a lot of people are saying, okay, you should be a vegan now. So what does one eat?
No, see, we need to understand food changes based on your lifestyle. And some of these what you keep hearing are fats, say millet consumption or eating raw vegetables. See, basically whatever energy you are going to spend is what you need to consume. And the source of energy comes from various forms. Say you need a combination of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. So depending on your lifestyle, how much you are going to spend, you need to make the combination of that. That's what I would suggest. Right. Any of these fats which are being and we are hearing can have serious effects also if we are not taking proper advice. Say for example, the keto diet. There's a lot of fat going around keto diet. So stop eating everything, drink coconut oil, and then eat a lot of meat kind of thing. What happens is the keto is about body breaks up fat in the body. The basic function we need to understand. Body stores fat with an understanding that it will be used in future as energy. That's how excess food is stored, as well as food is stored with a anticipation of use in the future. So these are the two reasons fat gets accumulated in your body. So if you starve, it gets accumulated more because it expects that you don't have food, so we need to store for future. You don't spend, it will get accumulated. So when you stop actually consuming food and then or move towards keto diet, your fat certainly burns, but it will also break up a lot of essential muscles and then say various other body parts. So it can have a serious impact. And if you have other health problems, it can be a serious issue. So don't get into such diets without proper dietitian's recommendation. So right. Millets also, say for example, if we talk about millets, millets are certainly better than rice in terms of ecological footprints. In terms of nutrients also, there are certain additional nutrients, but that's not a magic solution. They also have equal amount of carbohydrates. Whether you eat rice or whether you eat wheat or whether you eat jowar, it's a more or less similar amount of carbohydrate you are going to consume. So that way it is going to impact. So you need to understand it in a holistic way and make a decision. Similarly, the A1, A2 milk is a controversy which was created to create a market. Otherwise, there is no big difference between A1 and A2 milk. India largely consumes buffalo milk and it is A2 milk, buffalo milk. Goat milk is A2 milk. So, and the difference between A1 and A2 is a very small, minor molecule, and the difference is not significant on human health. The difference actually originally the study showed was between an Indian produced milk and an European produced milk, because the way it is produced also is very different. So A1, A2 milk is also your ecological footprint is lower. say if you want to import broccoli, or if you want to eat broccoli which is grown under cold storage, under the greenhouse conditions and all, obviously they also have a lot of consumption, ecological footprint consumption. So that's not the fact. Similarly, some of the nutrients are not available in the vegetarian food. So we also need to have animal source. Certainly animal proteins are important, and animal protein is a cheaper source of food. So
Yes.
it's not that animal source of food is bad. See, all the examples which are stated as animal food being high on ecological footprint comes from a Western consumption pattern, because say in India, most of these animals which are consumed, say whether you take poultry, apart from the large poultries which are there, now there is a significant shift towards small poultries which are forage based, free range chicken kind of thing. Similarly, if you take the entire sheep and goat, the entire mutton is a free range sheep and goat which is there. The Western counterparts, they actually produced in the stables, so they actually feed them with grain. So a grain based model is very different from a fodder based model. A grain based model, you need to calculate the ecological footprint of the grain as well. Say for a production of a mutton, 1 kg of mutton needs about 9 kg of grain. So the ecological footprint of 1 kg of mutton is 9 kg of grain, and then 9 kg of grain may need more water and more. So that's how it is calculated. Whereas in Indian condition, our sheep and goat feed on the naturally available material, and it eats away the crop residues and waste. So it is actually recycling. So both are very different production systems. So we need to understand that. Right. So there is a lot of myths which are floating around food. So we need to make a conscious choice.
Right. So that was a myth buster from your end. Thank you so much for that. So, with regard to the pesticides, so there was a lot of information on pesticides, which is not like, that the fact that pesticide is not good. You talked about it in detail at Satyamev Jayate in 2012, but that was 8 years ago. So are you satisfied with the escalation of organic farming that is happening? You talked about the fact that Andhra Pradesh is now going totally organic. We are also making an effort. When we are going to supermarket, we are thinking, okay, let me buy organic stuff. It's a bit expensive, but it's better. So let me, put in a little more money and buy an organic. But are you satisfied with the escalation of all those organic farming happening and lesser and lesser use of pesticides now that, there's a lot of talk about it, a lot of awareness about it?
See, there are two ways we need to understand this. One is about consciousness about food has increased certainly. So certainly we are happy about it. So say earlier people were not very caring about these issues, but now people are at least are worried about it. So that way it is a happy situation. But this has not converted itself as a benefit to the farmers. Say 90% of what you are paying to the organic food in the market, you're paying to the supermarket. So much of it probably for the air conditioner or for the supermarket space or for the hero who have advertised for the supermarket. So you're paying for all of them. So you are not actually paying for the farmer. The farmer is only getting what he was getting 10-15 years back. So that's the sad part of it. So you also need to make a change in your buying habit. So directly buy from farmers and farmers cooperatives, so that most of the money which you are paying goes to the farmer. I think that's what I would say. Second, on the pesticide issue, see, there is a myth that total pesticide consumption is going down. It is not true. Only states like Andhra, Telangana has recorded reduction. Many other states have recorded increase as well. Overall, if you take. And also the shift is also because we are moving from high volume pesticides to low volume pesticides. So that also is a factor. So instead of using, you have more concentrated pesticides where instead of using 1 liter, you can use half a liter kind of. And one grade of one of the chemical which is increasing significantly is the weedicide. Say 2012, when we were talking about pesticide use, herbicides were not a factor at all because the herbicides were not used much. Today, herbicide use has increased significantly. Glyphosate, and glyphosate is a carcinogen, identified carcinogen, and in India, it is permitted to be used only in non-farm areas or in tea gardens. but it is used everywhere. So in Telangana, we don't have a single acre of tea garden. In entire Andhra Pradesh, we don't have a single tea garden, but where tons of glyphosate is sold.
Right.
So glyphosate residues in our food is a real worrisome issue which we need to look into. And recently, you might have seen Government of India took a decision to ban chemical pesticides, some of the chemical pesticides, 27 pesticides, and these 27 pesticides ban came after a long discussion, and many of these are banned before 80s in many countries.
Okay.
And this was recommended almost 8 years back, and still there is a discussion going on about these pesticides. So they should be banned, and there are a number of other safer alternatives which are available. So when they are introduced, people say there is no alternative, and then they get introduced. And when they are banning, the people are not ready to leave the unsafe chemicals. So proven chemicals, at least you should get away. So I think these 27 pesticides have to be banned. And the regulatory system is completely in shambles. You know, the way regulatory system works, it's completely wrong. They take permission for one pesticide for one crop, but it is sold for every other crop. So all recommendations are made, and no one checks, and then no one even verifies that whether that can be used or not used, and then whether that recommendation can be made or not made, whether farmer is using in a right dose or not. Similarly, say we can take the case of, say, locust. Recently, there was a huge locust problem which we have seen, and a lot of pesticides were sprayed. So instead of 5% pesticides, there was a 95% pesticide spray solution is what was recommended. But that recommendation was for the desert areas, not the human habitations. Unfortunately, they were all sprayed in the human habitations as well, or in the farmlands. It will disturb the ecological balance. It will have a significant impact as the residues on human beings. No one worried about it. So these are certain issues when it comes to the pesticides we need to worry about.
Right. So the last question from my end is like this: you also had a TED talk on zero farmer suicide. So Mitti Back to Roots with Anshul Sinha ke saath. So I'm just nothing has changed. Like we talk a lot about farmer suicide, we feel terrible about it, and then that's about it. I mean, farmers are dying left, right, and center all the time. So can it be a reality that there will be a zero farmer suicide one day? And what can people, especially urban people, aware people, huddle together and do something about it to push that?
Neela?
Yeah, see, we need to take a step back and then look at why there are suicides. Right. Yeah, because there are about 3.5 lakh suicides which has been recorded in the last 22 years. Right. So from 1995 onwards, there's a data which is shown, and 27 years. And so we are not much worried about it. So basically, it's going on like that. And then it has become like a cricket score. We just see, like, or a COVID score. You basically see the numbers today when you open your newspaper. Many times even you flip it and then just don't worry about it. See, the problem of farmer suicide is the tip of the iceberg. The people whom you have seen walking during the COVID lockdown is also a tip of iceberg. See, all these are symptoms of the underlying agrarian crisis. The rural areas, the main issue is rural areas, the incomes of the people have become very, very low. Very low. And today, average income of farmers, a rural household today is around 8,000 rupees. It could be 8,200 or 8,300 on average, but it's around 8,000 rupees. And annual income is around 70,000 rupees. And probably all the people in the discussion today must be earning that more than that or multiples of this per month. So you can imagine a household income 72,000 rupees per annum. This is average income I'm talking about for Andhra Pradesh farmers, rural families. Okay, and this income comes from 4 different sources. Cultivation is about 35%, and wages, which is about 35 to 40%. And these wages are the ones which they get by migrating. And so Kharif, one crop they grow, second crop they don't have water to grow, so they migrate and then do this labor work, and then go back during June, and then again do the farming for 6 months. September they again come back and do the labor work. So that is the most of the lifestyle and life cycle for most of the people today. They're unable to get any work in the rural areas. So all this is because not proper investments are being made in the rural areas, and no proper efforts have been made to create livelihoods, and no proper efforts have been made to build their skills, and no proper efforts have been made to secure them access to productive resources as well. Say many of them are tenant farmers and they don't have access to land, and they are cultivating land, but their land is not, their landowner never signs an agreement with them. So obviously all the loans which are given, all subsidies which are given, if there is a crop failure, crop compensation, everything goes to the landowner. And today Andhra Pradesh and Telangana governments gives Raitu Bandhu and Raitu Bharosa. That also goes to the landowner, not to the farmer who is actually cultivating it. So given that kind of situation, the incomes are very, very low. So how do we address that is an important issue. So how do we actually improve rural income, and then what kind of opportunities we create is something which is very important. Otherwise, since it was all shown on television, in June people were walking, we are all worried about it, but it's an annual phenomenon.
Please?
Ma'am, will come.
Can I please ask a
question? Finish. Ma'am, can I come back to you? Let him finish and then we can come back to you.
So it is an annual phenomenon. Every June, people go back to the villages to grow crops during the Kharif and then come back again. So
Right.
this is happening for years together. Since this time there were no transport facilities, they were walking back. So you can also understand the desperation of walking. If they
Yeah.
don't go back and sow the crop, they don't have income. So that 70,000 rupees, half of the money will not be there. So to have that money, they were walking back. So how long they are going to continue like this? So what are all we are going to do so that these livelihoods can get sustained is something which is very, very important. I think that's where the issue lies. Yeah.
One sub question to it is, do you think this MSP is one of the reasons? Because I was checking from 1971 till I think in 90s, only it has grown 17 times, but salary of a teacher has grown 300, 400 times. Salary of a corporate has grown 1,000 times. So salary of everybody.
True.
Yeah.
True. See, in India, largely consumers are being subsidized by farmers. Food is highly subsidized by farmers, and that's what we are seeing. So whenever the very first question when you asked, you said the organic food is expensive, right?
Yeah.
See, the current food is cheaper because farmers are subsidizing it, and then farmers are dying at the rate at which they are selling it. And so what you need to worry about is not the price, but what you need to worry about it is how much of it is going to the farmer.
Right.
And so that's the whole issue we need to look at. See, MSPs have not increased, and then today, you know how many people have access to MSP? It's 6% of the Indian farmers. 6% have access to the minimum support price, and the rest of the people get lower than that. And the minimum support price is already very low, and what farmers get is much lower than that.
Yeah, there was a question, I guess. Ma'am, you can go ahead. Smita, ma'am?
Yeah, basically, I just wanted to ask that,
Yes.
of course, there are problems. Everyone knows these problems. So going on and on saying this is a problem, this is a problem, that is not going to give us a solution. What is the solution?
Correct. See, solution
What
is
is
about,
the solution?
two things we need to look at. One, how do we reduce cost of cultivation in agriculture is a very important issue we need to look into. And that comes from actually reducing the dependency on external inputs like chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and then buying expensive seeds. So farmers and farmers cooperatives making their own inputs and then using them in agriculture can certainly reduce the cost of cultivation, and then we could show it in several lakh acres in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. So there's a lot of examples which can show that it is quite possible if a group of people can come together and start doing it. So there are villages which have become completely organic as well. So it's quite possible to do that.
That is
and
one solution is that. That
and
is
it
one
will also
solution.
let me complete this. Second, it will also reduce the ecological footprint, so it can reduce your water usage, it can reduce your chemical usage. That's the first thing. Second, collectivizing at the village level to make a plan, and then farmers coming together to form into a cooperative, and then move one or two steps in the supply chain so that they can directly sell to the buyers or consumers is very important. So farming into farmers cooperatives is something which is very important. Amul has shown a great example. Today, the milk revolution in India is all because of the cooperative model. So farmers also should move into cooperatives, and it needs a lot of support from the government, and people like us, all of us should support that shift. So farming into cooperatives is something which is very, very important. That's the second important step, which is very, very critical. Third important area is about if you have to build livelihoods, if they want to build skills of the people, we need a lot of investments to be made by the government, and also many of the urbanites can contribute their skills to the people also. It is not just time, it is not just money which we can contribute, it's the time which we can give to the people, because say getting an expert who can help them in resolving their problem is extremely difficult today. So how we can pull up our skills and then extend it to the rural areas is one area we need to look into. So there are several organizations working towards that. I think if you can extend some of your time, you can say in a month I can give 2 hours time, 3 hours time, or 1 week time in a year. So we can work around that and then make a plan around that. So I think that's the kind of support which is required. So we need to make changes in the villages, and all of us have to contribute towards that.
Right. So we have a couple of questions in the chat box. I'll go from the first. So one is from Adrija. She's saying, what is your opinion of the government's recent proposal to ban 27 pesticides? I guess we already talked about it.
I already told, it is already late. I think we should ban them.
Yeah. Another question is, what can be done about making agriculture viable in drought-prone areas where rains are unpredictable and scarce?
So two important things which are there. One is making the changes in the cropping pattern. So we need to do a water budgeting, say in areas where you get about 500 millimeters of rainfall, an effective water use in the year should not be more than 500 millimeters. So if you are getting only 500 millimeters of rainfall, your usage also should be about 500 millimeters. But if you are growing paddy there, paddy needs about 1200 millimeters of water. So which means one season you are using 2 years rainfall, or 1 acre you are using 2 acres rainfall, and obviously you are mining your groundwater. So we need to make cropping patterns based on the rainfall which we receive. I think that's the first step we need to look at. Second, we need to increase the soil organic matter so that water holding capacity can increase. Third, we need to make in terms of have good crop coverage, the ground coverage. So particularly with crops which have small leaves, we have found that if you have very small leaved crops, like it could be chana, it could be groundnut, it could be horse gram. So if you can cover the crop in the entire field with such crops, you can actually save a lot of water. It can also harvest atmospheric water vapor. So both ways it will be very, very useful. Third, in terms of irrigation, today the entire irrigation systems are for flood irrigation. They are designed for flood irrigation. Can we move away from that and then create a system where life-saving irrigation can be created? Life-saving means in an entire year, in the entire crop season, there could be 2 or 3 critical stages for every crop. And at that point of time, if we can give irrigation, crop can be saved. And we found in Rayalaseema, in many villages with our experimentation, 2-3 irrigations can save the entire crop. So you don't need to flood the entire crop all the season, just 2 or 3 during the season at a particular period of time. So how do you identify that particular period of time, and then how do you apply? These two are becomes very critical. So one is a knowledge base, second is a infrastructure support. So that kind of facility is something which is very important. It may cost maybe about 1 lakh rupees per acre, but it's a permanent investment. You will not lose any crop. So if you can save, say, on average, about 40% of the crops are lost due to drought in Andhra and Telangana. And if you can reduce it to, say, 2% or 3%, there is a lot of saving on. So you have a good production, as well as you also save a lot of livelihoods. So we need to look into that kind of life-saving irrigation system to be established.
Right. So another question she's asked, Balram is asking how to develop marketing methods which are viable for farmers and consumers, for individual farmers or an FPO? So that's a very
One is, yeah, so it is basically about directly buying from farmers or farmers cooperatives. So consumers also should make some attempt to make that possible. And from farmer side also, they must make, we are all trying to make and then create platforms. Like I said, we have bulk, for bulk buyers, we created a platform called Organic Mandi. We created Sahaja Aram directly to sell to the consumer. There are a number of more initiatives like that by many organizations. Try to make an attempt to reach out to them and then buy directly from the farmers. I think that's what I would say. So consumers also should make some attempt. And if you can contribute in terms of designing such model, either as a technologist or as a business person, you're welcome, because all that knowledge is required.
Right. So one of the very practical problem is that I do want to buy from a farmer's market and all of that, but it is not easily available. It is available at times at a particular place on a Sunday where I am not free. So all those things do,
See, now online systems are all available. Yeah, so you can make an effort. See,
Right.
the problem is when there are no large consumption, cost of delivery is higher.
Yes.
So how do we gradually move towards a system where both producers, consumers benefit is something which is important. Because now currently all startups are getting a lot of venture capital, so they are able to do that. But FPO doesn't get any support, so we are facing that difficulty.
Right. So a very aware, conscious effort has to also be made from the.
Has to be happen. Certainly, we need to make a conscious effort, and it is not that difficult like 10 years back today. At least you can reach out. There are opportunities available.
Yes. So another question is, can techniques like zero budget natural farming be implemented in ecologically vulnerable areas?
See, if you talk about as a technique, I would say yes. And if you talk about as the way it is promoted as a religion, I would say, as a belief system, no. Because there is nothing like zero budget. There is an expense. If you calculate, even if you to make Jivamrita, Panchagavya or compost, there is a cost involved in that as well. So there is nothing like zero budget. There is a cost factor. And every acre needs about 4 to 5 tons of biomass. Without its application, crop is not going to sustain when we talk about organic or natural farming. And this may come as a mulch, as Subhash Palekar talks about, or it can be a compost, or it could be a green manure. So it could be in any form, but 4 tons of biomass is something which is essential in tropical conditions. Otherwise, it is not going to survive. Whether you use Panchagavya, whether you use Jivamrita or you use Amrita Jal or any other formulation, all these are basically fermented solutions of dung, and all of them have the same level of microorganisms. So whether the dung comes from a cow or a buffalo, not much variance is there as long as the animal is feeding on the fodder. So all these, if you are promoting saying only desi cow should be used, compost is bad, so that kind of ideological rhetoric is what you are talking about. No. And if you're talking about set of practices like mulching and then using Jivamrit kind of thing, I would say yes.
Right. Another question she's asking is, does the APMC Act affect the direct linkage between farmers and consumers?
Certainly, I think the changes in the APMC Act helps farmers to some extent, and it also depends on how the support systems are built. See, today, if you are talking about why farmers are unable to sell directly or why farmers are unable to sell to other traders, is because farmer borrows from trader. So obviously, is bound to sell to the same trader. So that is one factor. Second factor, since he has a very small farm, he or she cannot travel all the way to Hyderabad to sell. So obviously they try to sell locally. So how do we create aggregating platforms, and then how do we get them here is something which is very, very critical. I think that is something which we need to look into.
Right. Another question, I think, I don't know if it says we have created a hyper local GPS tag platform for farmers, where farmers their agri produce with their Google Maps location. This is for farmers near me. You can ask a question directly, I guess. a very long
See,
question.
yeah, I saw the question as well. See, if you want farmers cooperatives, yeah, certainly we can do. Giving access to individual farmers could be very, very difficult
Right, right.
because there
How do
are
we
lakhs
get
of
this
farmers. So
GPS?
we work with about 15 lakh farmers. So obviously, giving access to every individual farmers to you will be very difficult. We can give access to the individual farmers, the cooperatives, and then the federations which we form. So that we can do.
Rashmi, I'm sorry, I don't know how to type in the question.
Yeah, ma'am, go ahead.
I
No,
got in
please
late,
ask.
I don't know how to type it in.
No
Please
problem.
ask.
I want to know, are you making a platform where people can jointly, I don't know, lobby the government for everything that you say we should do?
Yes, yes. We have a platform. We call it as Raitu Swaraj Vedika. It's a platform of volunteers who work towards asking government all these issues. So we have a number of volunteers from across the country on this. We do it. Say on the pesticide issue, that's the discussions which have been raised. So a lot of awareness about these issues are being created because through this platform. It's called Raitu Swaraj Vedika.
Right.
Thank you. Can I separately get in touch with you, sir?
Yes, please. Yes, please. I'll
I'll
send
do
my.
that. I'll do that. I
I'll
have a
send
lot
my
of.
email. Yeah, please, certainly.
And I'll type the email over here as well. That's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, if you, Rashmi, if you could send us,
Yes, ma'am.
if you could send us his email
Yeah.
Yeah, I sent it.
in,
They share
in
the-
your follow-up mail also,
Yeah, sure.
please.
There is a
I saw your several videos that Rashmi had sent.
Thank
They
you.
were really good.
Thank you.
They were really good. And it's great what work you have done.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
I
very much.
am currently training farmers
Ah.
all over Karnataka, about
Okay.
5 locations, 1,500 farmers, and about 1,500
Okay.
farmers in Jharkhand. And
Okay.
our main core activity is training farmers in vermicompost production. And we have
Okay,
a
okay.
10-month
That's good.
hand-holding course
Okay.
with
Very
trainers.
good.
So there's a
Very
lot
good.
of involved things
Yeah.
that we need to follow up and have some
Yeah. Sure.
detailed
We can discuss
discussion.
on that. Yeah. Certainly we can discuss on that.
absolutely,
I
ma'am.
shared my email.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Email and WhatsApp. So there are no more questions. So I'll come back with my question. Is very specific question. My very specific question is: so what do we do to kind of aggregate the youth of today to kind of help us whatever you talked about? You there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So help us kind of build a movement and get maybe something, maybe 5-step, some kind of a 5-step program, a 5-step.
See, basically two things. One is about go and talk to schools and colleges. I think that is very important. And see, today the entire crisis what we are seeing is because of the education system being collapsed. And today education system doesn't provide anything beyond information. It doesn't create knowledge. It doesn't create skills. So people don't understand all these issues. See, whatever I talked about should have been taught in the college, right? And it is not happening. So how do we reach out to schools and colleges is something which is very, very important. And then how do we make changes in the education system is something which we need to worry about. And probably one attempt we all should make is to do that. So go and talk to the people. So if students start understanding, if students start demanding, courses will change. So I think that is something which we need to look into. So I think catching up on schools and colleges is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And then get them as interns into the villages so that they can go and see and learn from them. So today we have lots of volunteers who work with us. Around 200-300 volunteers regularly contribute for our work, and all that is happening because they came, they saw, and so from each one of these talks we get 1 or 2 volunteers, and then we hit on that. I think that's something which every one of us have to do. So extend your skills. Say you have a certain skill, so you extend your skills to the people. Say I come from an agriculture background, so I am extending my agricultural skill and computer skill. You may have a management skill, you may have a financial skill, anything else. So how you extend your skill to the rural areas is something you need to think about. Someone may have a mobilization skill. Somebody may be very good in writing. So how do you use these skills is something we need to look at.
Right. Yeah. So, do we have more questions here? Okay. So again, I'll come back to my own queries, and one of them is, what has been your journey like over over this long period of not choosing IRS, and then what do you think of that decision as well as a life, as a personal life experience?
See, many times. But today many of my friends and batchmates are in a very senior position, and many of them are decision makers as well. And on one whenever we talk and then look at what they are trying to do, and I certainly feel coming out was a better decision for me. I could do more by being out of the system. Being in the system, only certain things are possible. I'm not denying the effort. So within the system, there are certainly changes can be made if individuals try to do it. By coming out also, there are certain things which are quite possible. So I try to explore with a more without much restrictions on me. So a free-wheeled exploration I could do. Being in the system, probably I could not have made. And whereas in the system also, I have friends who could do it really well. So Praveen is one of my friends who now heads the social welfare department, social welfare hospitals in Telangana. Extremely well modified. He completely changed the way these schools function. Right. And I have IAS officers and secretaries in agriculture department who really did well in Maharashtra and Bihar. So I think there are a number of people who have done this. This entire initiative in Andhra Pradesh is done by an IAS officer called Vijay Kumar. So he could actually change it. So till you reach that level, you need to struggle and then move on. So both, it's about your choices. Right. But every choice you need to enjoy what you made. And then, isn't it? So if you start worrying about, I should have stayed back, and then instead of going around IAS officers, I would have been an officer who could have solved the problem, then it makes no sense. And I really enjoyed this journey.
Could we?
And certainly if I was in ARS or IRS, I would not have been like this.
Dr. Raman Janayelu, is it possible to call 3 or 4 of these IAS officers whom you speak of? Is it possible to get them together on one platform?
Of course.
And share how they change their state?
Of course we can do that. Of course we can do that. Yeah.
Rashmi, can you plan it?
Ma'am, I will try. I'll try that. Ma'am, I would.
Because we should do that. We should do that.
That's a good thought.
It can be done. It can be done. See, how you can use the system is also very important. See, always we talk about changing the system, but the system also has certain things which you can use. So how best you can use the existing system, and then how people could use the existing systems to make change is also something which we need to understand.
Right.
Yes, otherwise, it's always important to work. It's always important to work with the government.
Yes, it is very, very important.
Because what they can do, there is no way you could do it.
No way. So ultimately, it's the government which I need to change. So we need to worry about it, and then we need to talk about it. And then how do we improve governance is a very important issue. Each one of us has to worry about. How do we change education system is each one of us has to worry about.
And it's completely possible to do it, Dr. Raman Janayelu.
Quite possible.
It's completely possible to do it.
And also it is inevitable.
Plan on it.
It's not only possible, it's inevitable. If you don't do this, the change is not going to happen.
Right. So we have to believe.
That's right.
We have to believe that we are going to make the change.
No, it's not a belief. It's not a belief.
It's not. That's the only step. See, finally, that's the only approach.
Right.
No, it's easy to do, but the only thing is, we have to work at it. You can't wish for it.
Right, right. Of course. So,
So I'm so glad, Rashmi, that you put this thing together,
right.
because now we've got a plan.
Yeah, we do. I mean, that's the plan. That's what we are trying to do. I'm doing a farmer series and trying to, bring in more people and talk about farmers actually. So that's how, that's the plan, and that's how I eventually, that's
Yeah,
how
but talk,
make an effort.
no, that talk is not enough. Rashmi, talk is not enough. Awareness is not enough.
Yes.
40 years ago, when I was young, we used to do this awareness things. Now it's everyone is Jagrit. This is what I say. How Jagrit are we going to be? It's over. Jagrit, Jagrit, Jagrit. Kitna Jagrit ho gaye? Right? It's time to act.
Right, right. True that. So yeah, I mean, that's true, and it's almost 6 also. So yeah, maybe so. Anyone else? Manas, you want to ask something? Anybody? This is the last chance to ask anything. You want to ask Raman sir? My again last question is, I mean, what would be a last word? What would be a parting word, apart from the fact that we want to again get back and get in more people who are on the high positions, and maybe we can push a policy or something. But what would be your last parting word for today? Today's.
See, I would say each one of us have a role to play. So you need to think of what you can do before you ask others to change. See, many times we always want government to change, farmers to change. Say, we want farmers to go organic. We want corporates to go off. We want governments to be very honest and then do everything kind of. But what you are doing is more important. So I think as an individual, we need to think of what change you can make. By changing, how much damage you are causing can be reduced, and then how much you can contribute. And then whatever life you are leading, you have always something to share with others. So do share. It could be finances, it could be your time, and it could be your knowledge and skill. So do share with others. Sharing is joy. I think that's what you need to do. We grow by sharing, not by accumulation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Wonderful. Wonderful thought.
Yeah. So that could be the parting word, maybe. And for me, the very important line that I'm left with is: am I an aware consumer? Am I ready to make an effort and go and find that farmers market and buy from there? And Naveen,
an aware citizen, basically. I think that is important. Are you an aware citizen? So as a consumer is one of your role, but beyond consumer also you need to be an aware citizen in this country. You need to be an aware citizen, and you have certain roles to perform. You need to perform. I think that's
right. The last question has come from Naveen. He's asking, is there any platform where we can get the resources for making organic fertilizer? And so he wants to make organic fertilizers and pesticides.
Yeah, of course. You can contact us. We can get back to you. There are a number of farmers who make seeds and farmers cooperatives who sell that. And if you want to yourself to make, there are a number of resource material which is available on our website. So you can look at csa-india.org. I'll type it here, or Grameen Academy. So these two are our websites where.
I mean, you can write to me, and then.
Yeah. So either of it you can always visit.
Yeah, and anybody who wants to get connected to Raman sir, you please write to me, and then I'll connect over the.
Sure.
That works.
Yeah, we can do that.
Right.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you for today, sir.
Thanks, Rashmi. Yeah.